Well, we're back here again because I'm wearing a skirt and didn't want to have to sit on the bed. Hello and welcome back. I'm really excited for this vlog today because so far this is probably my favorite book that I've read for 2020. And that book is Not Our Kind by Kitty Zeldis. It takes place just after World War II, approximately 1947, and it's about this girl, Eleanor Moskowitz. She's about 25, 26 years old at the time, and she's living in New York, and she's Jewish. So she's already got a couple of strikes against her just because of the socio-political climate at that time, being female and being a minority. It follows her, and it kind of takes place about over the course of a year. So it starts out, she just left her job teaching, and she loves teaching. It's one of her passions. But she just couldn't stay where she was anymore because she felt slighted, and also she felt like she couldn't qualify her morals with what she was being asked to do. There was a student who plagiarized, and the headmistress wanted to sweep it under the rug. So she takes the opportunity to pick up her life and kind of start over, but she's really stressed out about doing that. As she's trying to find a new job, she coincidentally runs into the Bellamy family, specifically Patricia Bellamy, and it becomes the beginning of this very complicated, emotional interaction with this whole family. Patricia likes her. They are really close to being friends, but never quite there because that employer-employee relationship just always kind of gets in the way. She does, however, develop a very close bond with the daughter Margot Bellamy, who had polio just before the end of the war, and so she's just this very angry child, and Margot has a lot of issues interacting with people, but somehow with Eleanor she's able to get out of her shell, and she's just all around a happier person. But then there's Win Bellamy, and he's definitely a little bigoted, even though he may not think that he is. And he's just kind of the quintessential problematic white male dude of that time. But at the same time, as you read more of the story, you can't help but feel a little bit sorry for him, just because, I mean, his life isn't as good as he portrays it to be. Granted, that's no excuse for his behavior or his bigotry or his sexist behavior, but it does put it into a little bit of a context. And I think that's something that's really important with this book in particular, is context. I've been watching a lot of old shows recently, and it's really funny watching them because there are just so many things that happen in those TV shows or even in this book that totally wouldn't fly today. It's not PC at all. But you have to remember the time. Things were different. It was socially acceptable to call people out and to judge them and discriminate them for either being a female or being Jewish. As not cool as it is, and even Eleanor calls people out on it, which I think is just a really unique thing to have done. It's the time, and so there's kind of that expectation that it's okay. Even though I said I was going to try to read more quotes, I couldn't find one quote that stuck out to me because the whole book was just so impactful. I loved this book. I loved the plot. I loved the characters. I really enjoyed the way it was written. I felt such a connection with Eleanor, especially after she moves on from the Bellamys. There's an incident with Win, in part because he just doesn't trust her, and she, again, sticks to her guns and her morals and says, I can't be in this unhealthy environment, and decides to pick up and leave again. With, of course, helping Margot out before she goes, by finding her a school that specifically caters to children with polio. It was really inspiring, for example, to see her interaction with Tom, Patricia's brother, because throughout the whole story when they're interacting, you can tell that there's this spark between them. You can tell that they care deeply for each other and that they're just kind of meant to be. But after the whole incident with Wynne and leaving their employment, Eleanor decides to be more independent. She even becomes independent from her mom and finds a little apartment in New York and starts her life with her little job and whatnot. So when Tom finally comes back into her life, it's wonderful and it's romantic and she loves every moment, and then he asks her to marry her. And she realizes that her dreams have changed, and how even though a few months earlier she would have loved for him to have asked her and she would have said yes in an instant, she says, I have to think about it. And she tells him, I have independence now and it's the first time I've ever had it and I'm not ready to give that up yet. And so just seeing her character development in particular over the course of the book is just really satisfying for me. And I think it would be really satisfying for most other readers as well. Of course, there is a little bit of drama, kind of, that I'm sure you could infer just given some of the racial gender tensions. But there's also a little bit of drama just because of like intra-character conflict. Like Patricia doesn't want to be as stuck up as she really is, and she also doubts whether or not she should even be in the relationship with her husband because he doesn't seem like the same man she fell in love with. And then Wynne at the same time, he's just, this is where you feel sorry for him. His life is kind of falling apart, and on one hand you're like, well, you kind of deserve it, you're kind of a terrible person. At the same time, his fate is just really unfortunate. And while I can't say I didn't see it coming, it was still a little bit emotional just because of how all the other characters reacted. I would say my only complaint with the book is my usual minor frustration with shifting focalization. There were just times where it would be a chapter from Patricia's perspective usually, and then it would switch to Eleanor's perspective in the next chapter. And sometimes I wasn't sure what the timeline was. I wasn't sure if what they were experiencing was happening the same night. I wasn't sure if it was a day later or more space in between. So that was just a little confusing in terms of like my mental movie of the book. But other than that, it was great. I can't think of any reason why someone wouldn't want to read it, because I think it's just a very good reflection of America in the 1940s, but through a perspective that we don't often see. And so I just think it was a really well-written book, very well-developed characters, and I really enjoyed it, and I think that you probably will as well. So that's all I have for Not Our Kind. I'm really excited because I'm going to be partnering with the Left Hand Valley Courier and with Inkberry Books again. This time I'm going to be looking at Jim Ringle's 49 Buddhas. It is kind of an interesting book. I'm not quite sure how I feel about it yet or what I think. I'm only a little bit in, just a few chapters. But what is cool is that Mr. Ringle is a local Colorado author. So I like all the little Colorado, Denver references in there. Anyway, look out for that blog post, look out for that vlog, and of course look out for my article in the Left Hand Valley Courier. I'm super excited to share my thoughts with you, and I'll see you next time. Thanks!